Good afternoon or good morning. My name is Tim Sumerlin, and I want to bring you greetings from Denver, Colorado, the Rocky Mountain Churches. So grateful to be here today, so thankful to be able to speak to you about the topic of grief. And you know Christians, man. They just love talking. Just a quick background on me. I was in the ministry for a while. I was one of those guys on the JV team a bit. Kind of the eternal intern guy. Never quite got to the big squad, but I have had the pleasure over the years of being the right-hand guy to people. And so I've had this very unique perspective on the ministry and the kinds of things they go through. And I want to make sure today that as I speak to you, that I speak to you as humans. Whoops. Oh, they already advanced it. Okay. That you're human. You're human first before you're a minister. As Kyle so eloquently told us, you're God's child before you're a minister. And it's very important that today when we speak that we don't think about our churches per se right now. I'm sure you will later because that's who you are. But for now, think about your own life. You know, one of the sisters, she's the wife of our evangelist in Denver, Dawn Ferry. She came to the Disciples in Motion group once. And I asked her, hey, how did it go for you? And she said, Tim, I got to come as a person. I didn't come as a leader. I didn't have to think about preparing. I just came to help myself. I thought that was profound for me. It reminded me of the need that we have to do that. So as Jesus tells us, love your neighbor as yourself. He meant that. He said, guys, we got to treat ourselves at least as well as we treat neighbors. So today I've got a couple things to let you know about before I start. First of all, what I talk about might kind of trigger some of you. There might be some things said that bother you or that upset you. I get it. If you need to get up and walk out, that's fine. Please take care of yourself. We're going to talk for a little bit today, the first part, on your personal grief. Trying to help us get in touch with some of the griefs in our lives. And then the second part is just how God ministers to us in our grief. So before I do that, I got to introduce you to the family real quick. That's my family, my wife, Jackie, my children, Danielle and Tim, my new son-in-law, Adrian, and their old dog, Ranger. And then they just moved back from China recently, my daughter and my son-in-law, and they brought us little Elsa. And so Elsa's like the joy of my life. I just had to put that up so I could see her. I'm going to be a mess now. Somebody told me the other day, they said, yeah, when you have your own kids, you love them. But when you have a grandchild, you fall in love with them. And so I just had to do that. If you're the kind of person today that maybe just wants to listen and not take notes, feel free to do that. You go to my website, the notes are on there, you can download them. Sometimes people just want to sit and listen. You know, when Steve was preaching this morning, I just sat and listened. I just let it affect me, hit my heart. When Kyle was speaking, I just wanted to feel it and not have to take all the notes. So if you need to do that, go to the website. You can also sign up for a mental health blog that I have that you can get weekly. Okay, let's get started. Why did I do a book called The Grief Journey? Who wants to do grief, right? I didn't. Let me read to you the introduction for my book. In the fall of 2006, I received the most devastating news of my life. My mother had lung cancer. What? In my family? How could this be? She had never smoked a day in her life. She was always a picture of health, and we expected her to live to be 90, even 100. I was confused, overwhelmed, emotional, distraught. The next few months were a blur of visits, prayers, tears, and then finally, the call in the early morning hours of February 20th, 2007, that she had peacefully passed away. I was shocked and speechless. My grief landscape crumbled A few short years later, my father passed somewhat unexpectedly. One day he was in the hospital, or he was at home on the phone talking to me about his newfound friend, Betty. The next day he was in the hospital, in a coma, facing death. I was able to rush to his bedside, pray with him, tell him how much I loved him. And I stayed up with him all night by his bedside. The next day we brought him home from the hospital, and he died early in the morning of January 1st, 2011. I felt lost, lonely, confused, hurt. Again, there were tears, prayers, shock, pain, and a flood of tears. You see, for many years as an adult, I believed that if my world fell apart around me, I could go to my parents' house and be okay. I'd have a bed to sleep on and food to eat. That was no longer possible. A 50-year-old foundation was gone. My older brother Craig at the funeral said this, "I feel like an orphan." You see, Helen Keller said, "The only way to get to the other side is to go through the door." These events started a personal grief journey for me and led me to the Grief Journey group and the book. I decided to open wide that door. You see, embracing grief is lamenting, and it calls for a need of resolution. So why do we do this? Why do grief? Well, here's why we do it. You see, either we deal with our grief or our grief deals with us with hidden cost. We don't have a choice, brothers and sisters. Grief is such that we either engage it and deal with it, or it deals with us. And it's got hidden costs. Here are some of the hidden costs I've seen. We fail to honor a life well lived. I was able in my grief to honor the lives of my mom and dad as they lived their lives in my presence. But if we don't engage grief, we don't honor that. We act like it never happened. We might get deadened in our hearts and bitter. I know people, their friends and their families suffer because of their unwillingness to engage grief. We might become suspicious of God's goodness. I struggled with that. I'm like, God, what is the deal here? Why would you do this to my mom? I couldn't figure it out. We could struggle with that for years and years if we don't engage our grief. Our joy and our energy can be minimized. So today, please open your heart up to possible griefs in your own life. You see, Jesus was a man of sorrows. And it's really true. In many ways, all life is loss. I know that doesn't sound all encouraging, but some people would say this. They say all life is lost, and if you think about it, you kind of are living that way. My little granddaughter the other day, she's almost 2. She loves to get in the Tupperware drawer and pull Tupperware out. And the other day, I was like, no, you're not going to do that today, Elsa. Sorry. And she just lost it. She let me have it. I thought, oh my gosh, from this time, she's losing stuff. She lost the ability to go do something she wanted to do. In one sense, all life is lost. Here's what we tend to do, though, is we tend to compare and minimize our losses. So we'll have a loss, and then we'll compare it to something that was greater. And we minimize our ability to grieve loss. You know, after, John knows this, John Lusk, I used to have this basset hound named Brewski. My favorite all-time dog. I love Brewski. I have a portrait over our fireplace. My daughter once said, Dad, that is by far the biggest portrait in our house. And I'm like, yeah, what's your point? Like, of course it is. So Brewski got cancer, had to take him in and put him down. Bawled like a baby. Went home and I was struck. My heart felt empty, the same way it felt when my mom died. And I said, Tim, what's wrong with you? It's a basset hound, for crying out loud. I compared and minimized. We take each loss for what it represents in our life. Brewski was my buddy. He was my camping friend. He was the way I connected to my neighbors. I'd take him for a walk, and everybody's like, let me pet your dog. That's how I connected. We take each loss for what it represents. Don't compare or minimize. How about you? Have you lost loved ones in your life that you just haven't paid much attention to? Friends, parents, siblings. How about your church? Did you lose your church back in 2003? I felt like I lost my church in 2003. The church I was baptized into and my dreams and goals, it changed. I'm like, I lost it. What happened to my church? Maybe you feel like it was your fault. Like if I had stood up and said something, that's a loss there. Personal dreams, visions. How about goals that might be fading in your life? Your health, your finances, the ability to control. I've learned that the more I try to have control, the worse things get. The more I try to control my kids and tell them what they should do, the worse they got. There's things in my life I have no control over anymore. Maybe the idea of living your life as an individual. I know being in the ministry is a unique position. Your social arena is also your job. So these are your best friends, but you're also like their, your mentor and all that. You can lose the ability to even be an individual. How about the support? Is the ministry honored in your city? There's a lot of places the ministry isn't honored anymore. I went through that as an educator for many years. And then finally, your children's challenges and journeys. It's hard, guys. It's hard to watch your kids. Even as adults sometimes, it's hard. So instead of comparing and minimizing or denying or compartmentalizing, sloughing off, being strong, instead of all that, be like Jesus. And we're going to talk about him in a few minutes, but he engaged his grief. You see, the pathway to resolving grief is walking through the door. And that door is oftentimes lamentation. Lamentations 1 verse 12, is it nothing to you, all you who pass by? Look and see. God calls us to stop and look and see. Look around your life. One of the exercises in my book is we do a lifetime of loss. We just write down all the losses in our life and what they've done to us. I did that and I was shocked at the amount of loss in my life. And I'm no different than anybody in this room. Normal life stuff. But I was shocked at how much loss I had and how I had responded to it. So sorrow is the beginning of resolution and grief. I want to do something for just a moment here. If you would, look at the person next to you for just about 30 seconds and share one grief and how it impacted you. For 30 seconds, and then switch. So just about a minute or so, and then we'll come back to the class. Okay, let's pull back together again. What just happened in this room? What just happened here? I ask that question often after I do this exercise. What happened? Connection. It's exactly what happens. A lot of things happen, but connection happens. When we open up our lives and when we're vulnerable and we're even hurt, we connect to other people. I have people, I do this in like large audiences sometimes, and they'll go, I don't even know the guy's name next to me, but he's my best friend now. Like, I'm connected. You see, weakness and vulnerability builds connection with one another. Jesus once said this. He said, when I am lifted up, what's going to happen? I draw all men to myself. Jesus said at the worst day of my life, the most vulnerable moment of my life, when I'm crucified, people are drawn to me. That's how Jesus draws us to him, is through his weakness. Paul used the word weakness 12 times in the book of 1 Corinthians, in 2 Corinthians. He said, I'm weak. I know I'm supposed to be leading you guys, but I'm weak. Weakness draws people to us. In our grief groups, people are connected to one another. And that's one of the ways we work our way through grief. After the break, we're going to look at Jesus doing that in a moment. But weakness is a powerful entity in our lives. It draws one another to us. Okay, can we fix grief? It's one of those questions you're not sure, like, want to, can I? Oh, you're going to find out in a minute we can't. Here's what Proverbs say in chapter 25, verse 20. Like one who takes away a garment on a cold day, or like vinegar poured on a wound, is one who sings songs to a heavy heart. This is what we do with one another. We try to fix each other's grief. And we try it by saying things. And what the Bible tells us is you make it worse. And guys, I've done all these, trust me. I was on the phone the other night with a sister who just lost her son. And I did one of them. I didn't mean it. I just did. And after the call, I'm like, Tim, you idiot. But we try to fix one another's grief, and we can't. Here's some of the ways we do that. We say nothing. And by the way, we say this to ourselves. I'm not talking about what you do to other people. That's also true. I'm talking about what we say to ourselves, is we say nothing. We're just like, or we'll give it some little theological thought in our brain, but we don't say anything about it. How you doing, bro? I'm good. I'm getting through it. We just don't say anything. We don't open up. We don't go there. Doesn't fix our grief. Here's another thing. You might say, I was kind of lucky. Somebody asked me that once about, how old was your mom when she died? I said, she was 82. He goes, you're kind of lucky. You had her for a long time. I said, listen, she could have been 182, and it would still hurt when she died. But we say that to ourselves, well, at least I wasn't a teenager when she died. We say things like, you're lucky. I ought to be over this by now. It's been 3 weeks. It's been a month. It's been 2 months. It's been 6 months. Why am I not over this by now? We start heaping guilt on ourselves. Don't feel bad. Your mom wouldn't want you to feel bad, so don't feel bad. Somehow me feeling bad is wrong? God forbid. It was my mom. Of course you're going to feel bad. You lost a dream. You lost a child. Your child goes off track. You don't get to do what you wanted to do, what you thought God had in mind for you. Yes, you probably should feel bad about that. Other people might say, I know how you feel. I know how you feel. Actually, you don't. It wasn't your mom. Just like I don't know how you felt when your mom passed away. We have over attempting to relate to each other. Here's another one. Time heals wounds, right? Actually, time doesn't heal wounds. Time by itself does not heal wounds. I've got a good friend in Denver. His dad died about 25 years ago, and every time I ask him, bro, how's that going for you? He would just kind of spout out this anger about his dad. I'm like, whoa, time has not healed your wounds yet. Now, time with a grief process can do wonders to heal wounds. Fortunately, that brother came to group. He's doing really good with his dad now. Much better than he used to. But time by itself Does it heal wounds? Here's another one. That reminds me of when, and then we compare. Be careful when you try to fix your grief. Be careful what you say to yourself. Be careful what you believe about yourself. Because we don't get to fix this thing. After the break, we're going to talk about how God does draw near to us in our grief and how God reaches out to us and helps us to get through these hard times. We're going to go ahead and take a break right now, and we'll come back right in about 5 minutes.